Hey fam, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications.
Three suspicious fires at black churches in St. Landry Parish in Louisiana. The state's top arson investigator said late last week that they discovered several patterns at the three crime scenes. State Fire Marshal Butch Browning did not explicitly link the three. The churches are St. Mary's Baptist Church in Port Barre, Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, and Greater Union Baptist Church, both in and around Opelousas, Louisiana. Greater Union has served worshipers for over 100 years. Reverend Gerald Toussaint is the pastor of Mount Pleasant and told ABC News that the church is not that building, the church is the people. The burning of the black churches has a long and sordid history in America. During Reconstruction and the Civil Rights Movement, black churches were regularly targeted with bombings, violence, and fire. We all remember that Dylan Roof murdered 9 people at the Mother Emanuel Baptist Church in Charleston, South Carolina, not as well known as the nearly 200 years before Emanuel AME's predecessor had been burned down in 1822. Charleston's white civic leaders feared an insurrection by the city's enslaved residents. Joining us now is Ashley White, a reporter from the Daily Advisor in Lafayette, Louisiana. Miss White, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So give us some context from on the ground, what exactly these churches meant and what the investigation around it entails.
So state authorities have not linked these fires together yet. They've gotten really close to saying that they're linked, that there are patterns between all three of them, but haven't come out right and said it yet. But these churches are really important to these communities. St. Landry Parish is about 40% black, and so these churches mean a lot, and they've been around for a long time. As you were saying, at least 2 of them are 100-year-old churches.
And with that, what are people in the community saying about these? Do they think these are just 3 random incidents, or do they see a link between them?
The church leaders think that there's a link between them. And I think they're waiting for the authorities to come out and say that. But they're also being really supportive of each other. And the churches that are still standing are opening up their doors to these churches who have been affected by this.
And you said that other communities rallying around these churches. What are the plans to rebuild, or have they even gotten that far yet?
They haven't gotten that far yet, as far as I can tell. I spoke to one of the reverends today, and they haven't even really started accepting any sort of funds to start rebuilding. I think they're still kind of in shock a little bit, and are still waiting for the investigators to wrap up anything that they need to do before they start moving forward.
Have there been any plans to heighten security around other churches in the parish, or other measures being taken to secure other historic black churches?
The sheriff in the parish has stepped up patrols in the area, and part of the problem with these churches is that they're in really secluded areas of this parish. So it may have made it a little bit easier for these fires to happen. And other people have suggested to the reverends that they install security systems just to keep an eye on their churches.
And you said other churches in the area are opening up their doors to try to bring these parishioners in, get them somewhere to worship. For people who might want to donate or be involved, have they set up any apparatus of that nature, GoFundMe pages, anything like that for people who want to help support these church members?
Not yet. I've got in contact with one reverend today and have reached out to the other 2 to ask them that exact question. And one of them has said that anyone who wants to donate should reach out to him directly. And that is the reverend at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. But the other 2 haven't said anything.
And with that, how is the local press working to make sure that the word gets out on this? Because I think part of the vigilance that will come, part of people being able to protect their churches will come from knowing more about this. So how's the local press covering this?
We are reaching out to the state authorities, and they're keeping us as much in the loop as they can. We're all keeping in contact with the reverends and seeing what they need and how they're doing on a day-by-day basis. And we're just trying to keep in contact as much as possible, and the state authorities are being as communicative as they can.
All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for your vigilance on this story, and keep us informed of any new developments, particularly if we determine that these church burnings were linked. Thank you so much, Ms. White.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to go back to the panel. Michael, what's your take on this? Do you think that there is a connection between these church burnings?
I think that's pretty clear. I think the issue is what to do about them and how to keep them from happening. That's the problem. I mean, we know today the Revolutionary Guard in Iran was slapped with the terrorist tag. I don't know how white supremacist groups haven't been slapped with that same tag, because they caused so much more harm in this country recently than anyone with of Arab descent or that's a Muslim. So it seems to me that the playing field is not level, and folks aren't being treated the same. I have no problem if I don't call him I call him 45. If he decides to slap the terrorist tag on that group, fine. So slap the terrorist tag on these white supremacist groups as well.
Janice, how would that work? How would we be able to identify kind of an ambiguous idea as being a terrorist group? Because the group, they changed their names, they changed their affiliation, but the same ideology stands. How exactly can we fight back against this rise in white supremacy?
You're reminding me of the question that Facebook has been asking themselves for the last month or so, and finally they came down on the right side, that there is no distinction between white supremacy and terrorism and xenophobia. All these philosophies sort of blend together. I tell you, they may not be linked to each other, but I tell you what they are linked to. They all linked to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and the sense of permission that people have to express their basest fears and their worst nightmares in action. I have no doubt about it. I think about the work of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and certainly they keep statistics and they keep watch. And we used to have a Justice Department that kept active watch on suspected terrorists, and certainly some of these violent types ought to be on those watch lists as well.
And Amisha, it's interesting because these attacks, as we said in the opening, are always linked to black churches, because they know that's where we organize. They know that's where the spirit, the heart, the soul of community is. Why do you think these groups are expanding their attacks on black churches at this time?
Because we have an election coming up in 2020. Also, to your point, the organization of the black community has always had its epicenter at the black church. It is the one place where you have growth in ideology, growth in thought. You have people who are moving towards making sure that major policy decisions are made. This is where you get the boots on the ground. This is where you get the majority of the people in the community to come together around a single thought or around a single approach. I think that it is extremely tragic, but I also find it problematic that leaders in Louisiana are not calling this out more fervently. If this had happened and it was another group or another group of individuals, let's say it was the Muslim community, you would hear something that's very different. Jewish community, you would hear something that's very different. When it happens to the black community, it is really shameful that we have, first and foremost, have a president who seemingly carte blanche is okay with this going on. He has not rebuked it in any real form, but he has also given rise to people who already had these innate senses and thoughts amongst themselves, but now feel it necessary to act those out. And I think that as we continue moving forward and watching the rhetoric of this president and this administration continue to go unchecked, you're going to see more issues of violence against African Americans.
Well, on that point, Michael, you're a former DNC finance chair. We see a lot of politicians show up at black churches around election season. They'll sit in the pews, they'll shake the tambourine, they'll kiss the first lady, all those things. But when black churches are getting burnt down, they get very recalcitrant in calling those things out and actually supporting those churches, actually putting police guards around those churches. It shouldn't be the onus just on the churches. If you know these churches are in danger of being attacked by white supremacists, then station some police officers out there. You'll go there to get elected, but for some reason people don't feel the need to go there and address these issues when the church is under attack. How do we fix that?
And of course, full disclosure, as a former elected official here in D.C., depending on the pastor, they won't let you come in and out. You got to sit for the whole service.
Yes.
And
hey,
so,
I paid the love offering. Love offering is real.
When you run for office, you get a lot of church. But you know, I think you're right. There has to be a partnership between the communities, the police departments, the elected officials, and the churches. And you know, but if you talk to some pastors, they don't like a police presence. So it's almost on a case by case, because they don't want people thinking that they're in danger, and they want people to come and worship in peace. So it goes, I think, in both ways. I know a lot of synagogues feel the same way. A lot of mosques feel the same way, and temples. So I think it's a case by case, but you have to have dialogue. What does that particular church community want?
And Janice, this is part of a series of attacks across the country. You know, one church, I believe, somebody spray painted "Vote Trump" on the front of the church. We've had other racist propaganda and anti-Semitic propaganda, swastikas outside of black churches nationwide. What is the proper way for us as a community to address these things without having, you know, armed Black Panthers outside these churches? What is our way of combating this rise in nationalistic, white supremacist thinking nationwide?
I think one thing we have to recognize is that it is not just a national phenomenon. If you look across Europe, you see the same sort of sentiment arising. And generally, it comes from loathing and fear and a sense of insecurity among people that I don't fit in anymore. If you go to some places in the South and some places in the middle of the country, people feel left out and passed by, that the American dream is no longer real for them and their children. So I think we have to have a real discussion about what it means to be not just an American, but a world citizen almost. Look at Brexit. Look at what they're going through.
The yellow
it's almost
almost
reminiscent of what Europe probably looked like in the mid-1930s. And so you do have to, you know, without being fear-mongering, you have to ask yourself, where does the xenophobia, how can we calm this spirit that I'm being left behind?
And it's interesting that the removal of privilege is now being spun as oppression by these groups. That the same groups who they claim their ancestors came here and founded this great nation, no, they came up, they got free land, and then for a few hundred years they got free land and free labor, and therefore they got ahead. And now that the playing field's getting even just the most slight bit evened, now that you have black presidents and senators and mayors and congress people and CEOs, all of a sudden they feel they're being oppressed and they need to fight back. And that's where a lot of this white nationalist way of thinking came from. Last comment, Amisha, should we as a community, our generation in particular has stepped away from the black church. Now, many people in our age group just aren't showing up every Sunday. We're big attendees at Bedside Baptist. Should there be a re-emphasis on getting young people back into the church and having them support these organizations?
I absolutely think that there should, but there also has to be a response from the church to young people's needs. As a millennial, I can say that I grew up in the church with my grandparents, but as an adult, it is very hard. On the south side of Chicago, I see young people who can't find jobs, young people who live in gun and gang violence infested communities, young people who don't have anything to do because the after-school programs have been shut down. The church is not wrapping their arms around those individuals. And to tell young people that you need to go to something and you're watching them not really do anything for this group is a very hard sell. At the end of the day, it can't be that, well, my grandparents went, so the expectation is that I'll go, because that tradition has continued to die. But in addition to that, there also has to be some feedback and some wraparound to these young people who often are lost in things I think the church has historically been able to solve.
Yeah, and for some of these pastors, stop wearing $3,000 sneakers during your sermons. Just put that out there. Not a good look for an impoverished community when the pastor's buying, you know, Lamborghinis. Let's just, you know, even it out a little bit.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Calling all HBCU alumni, including me, Clark Atlanta University, students and leaders enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Building on their long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement their proposal. The deadline to apply has been extended to April 15, 2019. Go to FGB.Life for more information and to apply. Ford goes further in our community.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.